There we go. I was putting myself on the mute button. I didn't hit the record button. All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. This is Office Hours 25. We have something shameful to admit, which is we missed one. We missed a week. We did our office hours. Well, we did our office hours in person. It was beautiful. Everyone saw each other. It was the first, only the second time we've ever seen 𝗕𝗏 in person. It's always weird. It's like, you just talk to this person every day, and yet you've never, you barely ever spend any time in person. And the idea was that we were going to do an in-person office hours recording. We got too excited. We're limited in time. We're like, we got some planning to do. And so we did some offline stuff, which was great, but we were sad about this. So we're sort of trying to make up for today, but today is again, office hours 25, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a little bit after that now. So let's go up with the hands and then we'll get started there. Okay, easy five, yes. Right. Joined by the wonderful guest, Justin Finkelstein. Nice to see you, sir. It's been too long.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a while.
Let's we'll give you some time here, and then I think there's some interesting topics that you'll be pretty pumped about here as well. I guess anything off the top from anyone though before we start, maybe
quick introduction round.
Yeah, quick intro. Tyler, very interested language, visualizing language, trying to extract meaning from it, tell stories from data. Spending a lot of time on these things right now. Excited about everything going on. Just released a quarterly update, and that always drives a bunch of really interesting things out of it. So I'm sort of reeling from the opportunities and the fun stuff that comes from that, and glad to be here today. I didn't shower today. I have not showered, so I'm sorry if you can smell it on the screen or something. Yeah. Someone else, go ahead.
I can jump in, I guess. I'm Lauren. I'm the accountant here. I like to play with numbers and play with words and figure out some data, make it look pretty, hopefully. And yeah, just glad to be here and chat. And it's great to see Justin. I haven't seen him in feels like months.
Yeah, it's been a while. Good to see you, Lauren.
Justin, you're talking right now, so maybe a little intro from your point.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Justin Finkelstein. I've got a company called Ideas to Reality. Very just passionate about using subconscious minds and using communities to get work done. So anything inside us, speaking is the most natural way to be able to communicate, to be able to extract insights from that has been a passion of mine for a while.
I don't know about you, Justin, but sometimes 3 months have passed or so since you were last on here maybe, and it's like, are you the same person? Do you introduce yourself differently? Do you talk about your passions differently? It's interesting. I feel like you're a shapeshifter who evolves every day, and that's a wonderful thing. But a lot of cool things
I appreciate
that stay the same.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And then, just one last part. Lauren and 𝗕𝗏 have slowly realized that they continue to talk at the same time, and today was clean. Lauren went first, 𝗕𝗏. So maybe 𝗕𝗏 take a moment to say hi.
Yeah, intentionally delayed it just to see what would happen. So I am 𝗕𝗏, a digital strategist, marketer, writer here at 𝗕𝗏. Currently focused on helping Tyler out with some proofreading and brainstorming. We're in the thick of fundraising, which is fun, but always like nervous time. Yeah. And excited to restart our office hours today. Soft reset.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm 𝗦𝗶𝗴 𝗙𝗿 𝗙𝗃. It's a little break in between the office hour. I missed also the couple of last office hours, probably 23rd, 4th, while working on a couple of things. And yeah, I just came back from a pretty after a long time break from the 𝗕𝗏 and went to the Vancouver. Sometimes you feel that you are right about so many things and you end up on the other side and you realize that, okay, this is not what it is. So a lot of realizations, a clear vision about what I personally and what also at 𝗕𝗏 we want to do, and having that confidence about what we are doing and why we are doing brings a lot of value. So I'm very excited about that. And again, welcome Justin after a very long time. I just asked Tyler, to be honest, a couple of days ago, right? It's like, you heard from Justin, how he's doing. So it's very nice to see you.
I guess there's two different sort of vacations that happened, Justin, and I don't know how much you'd relate to this, which was That's a Wonderful Vacation went on Vancouver, and deservedly so. Basically went, and he just took the time to enjoy ourselves. So our rule was like, don't message 𝗲𝗀𝗀, basically. Just let him have some time, get some clarity, enjoy that time. And then I went sort of on vacation to the cottage, but the curse or the plight of that cottage is that it has wonderful data and Wi-Fi connection. And so I just couldn't tear myself away from calls or, anything. So I got like that sort of semi-half vacation, which, it's when you love what you do, it's not a bad thing. But I think at some point, the value of what 𝗲𝗀𝗀 did, where you sort of disconnect completely, you have that mind, that mental energy and space, produces a lot of value. The last time I did that, I went to Burning Man for like 12 days and I came back a Tyler 2.0.
Actually brings more value. It adds more value and like helps you in many ways.
Yeah. And I guess, Justin, you're a welcome guest here. If anything, an update for anyone who has watched Office Hours along the way and like say, hey, this is a recurring character who stars on this TV show, and always enjoy the presence. Anything from your side, or I guess, macro trends of what you're seeing right now? Yeah, I just would love to hear some insights from Justin.
Yeah, I guess, from a macro perspective, I'm still super interested in the creator coins and being able to create, smaller economies with the coins. My big thing over the last, I've gone a little bit underground, I guess, the last couple of months. I've been working on implementing the art of impossible, the full system. So having everything captured, because one of the distractions with having so much, or one of the frustrations with having so much data is being able to use it to be able to contextualize that. So I feel I spent the last couple of months just being able to capture all personal data, getting very interested in longevity. And then also in the near future, very interested again in the interaction between large corporations and startups and how they are to interact. I just got a podcast, which I haven't seen yet. This is pretty bad that I gotta look this up, but it is about, it's called Corporate Jamming, about taking the best of startups and large corporations. So somebody just sent me the link for it. I think those are the big ones. And then just really enjoying summer, paying attention to having an 11-year-old who is on the precipice of being a teenager and kind of enjoying these last, couple years of pre-teenage, years. And so we've been doing a lot of the theme park stuff and, water parks and all that good stuff.
You seem very active. I mean, every time I talked to you before, you were on the top of a mountain skiing or like snowboarding. So I just switched to summertime activities. But okay, that's great to hear. I know I miss, you sort of maybe even I have maybe some parallels with you, which is like buzzes of activity and then sort of the hibernation period of like focus internally and then come back out with too much energy. The just sort of the cycle of life.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing that we're, basically, I'd love to hear some insights from you, but just from the whole team, which is one of the companies that we're working with right now. They're growing company. And one of the things they're really trying to promote right now is a podcast. And it's not just like a low budget kind of, small little podcast. They've hired a professional, sort of moderator in it. They're getting very legitimate people to come through, themed episodes with great sort of artistic direction on the audio, but then also the messaging. And so one of the big drives is to promote that. And with that, brand awareness, but then what we're also trying to help is some of the things that we've talked about in the past, which is how do we increase search engine rankings and sort of do this all at once. But one of the things that we're trying to figure out, Justin, and we'll talk about this a little bit, which is this idea of like templated outputs. And one of the things we're really interested in right now, we came across this thing called an all-in-one, maybe Nihal, the exact one, all-in-one podcast sort of stats. And they were looking at Jason 𝗪𝗪𝗪 and the team in their podcast. And they did like these visualizations of like sort of like talk time, air time, who was speaking the most. And it's pretty interesting. They built up a little community there, 1,000 people on Twitter, but the people who are on that podcast are really engaged in following the stats after. It's like, who's had the longest monologue that episode? And it's like 𝗪𝗪𝗪. It's like, and they've got little infographics basically. And so the thing that we're trying to figure out here with Speak is like, how can we create sort of these compelling, beautiful outputs at the endpoint? So how can we take the raw information in, but then start to produce something valuable? And specifically through the lens of podcast, we're trying to figure out like, what things would be interesting to visualize or to see represented in a podcast that then we could be sharing as sort of like data shareable assets after that sort of like tell a story through data or give highlights of the thing. So I'm not sure if you have anyone can jump on this, but this is something we're trying to crack right now, is like this sort of like podcast visualization and how we do that nicely. And then that can convert over to a bunch of different other things too.
I definitely have some thoughts on this, but I'll, do you want me to jump in on it?
You look like you're ready to go. Yeah. I'd love to
Yeah, I'm
hear.
ready to go. Yeah. So a couple of other things. They just did the Friends reunion, which you guys are probably too young to really like it, but it was a really I wasn't that big of a fan of the show, but I liked the reunion, and it kind of brought me back to a time. And they're saying like Friends was about that time. I'm going somewhere with this. That time when your friends are your family, and I think that is. I've never listened to what they're called, the besties. I've never listened to any of their stuff, but they're sort of that like that on their your entrepreneur friends or your, in some cases your billionaire friends for this period. So they've got a special thing that is going. And so I guess now if there's some relationship and you're interested in their characters, even though they're human beings, if you're interested in the characters with the podcast, and then what aspects of those characters can be measured. So that's what I would start there. But I would start human. And then also I think for the podcast right now, it's community based, right? You got to have at least, one person who's super interested in what's going on and what they're doing. That's going to bring other people, even if it's a small community of people that really care about what somebody's doing. That's another factor. So I would go human element first. And then on the human side, you'll start bringing out the data people. Do you know what I'm saying? But I think it's not unique for their podcast, but it makes sense for their podcast. So they talk about, because of the personal relationship and not just like the push of the data.
One thing then, again, I don't want to hog this conversation time, but there's like one thing that we found, sort of, different systems doing it, but a lot of things that people default to is sort of that like word cloud visualization. And sometimes, especially on an individual file or across multiple files, we find that to be, I would say, meaningful to the person who has created that, but abstract to the people who have not been part of that conversation or who hadn't listened to it. So to just see a word cloud is great. This is a sort of cool representation, but I am out of context here. And so how, one of the challenges with data and with analytics is, how can you tell a meaningful story that's compelling, that brings someone who is, outside of the loop into the loop? And like, I would see that just in marketing, like, I'm helping with marketing stuff. And it's like, if I build a Google Data Studio that shows reporting, these people are not the ones interfacing with the advertising every day. It's, a COO or something who wants to come in and get a high level snapshot, understand it, and then take meaning from it without having to do the day-to-day interaction with this information every day. So we're also trying to think of, how can we visualize this that breaks that context and is also beautiful, so that data is beautiful. Just one example we saw, I'm not sure if you saw that image, the one Nihal shared, but it was like a word cloud, but it was in the shape of a microphone, or like in the shape of a person's face that is the person who make the podcast or something. Like, how can you sort of use the mathematical representation of the meaning, but then to create something more stunning or contextual? That's brainstorming. Something to think about.
Question I was questioning to myself is like, is that the value, or is that the beautiful representations has the more weightage on the output template? So what does that mean? Is like, okay, do we want to display beautifully? Is that the one part, or the another part is like how we can create more value, not for the business, but also for the individuals who are working for the business? It's like how we can create more values using those templated versions. It's like, what are the next step, or what will help them with those templated outputs? Where does it go? Is that the representations of just the data where they can see, like the Google Data Studio, you export in a format and display it? That's a one part, or the process, or they can take from the templated output and do or take some actions for their business.
Interesting. Like, inherently, I believe there's value in things that are beautiful, but not necessarily practical business value. One of the things that Nihal, I believe you sent me the link, was like Gartner did the analysis of all the top 100 Do you remember more on that? Do you have anything that you can add to that? Shortcut's not working. He's gonna
Oh,
come.
there you go. No, so I believe the Gardner report was more them analyzing the past year's earning calls and visualizing that, and basically using that to visualize important moments from the earning calls that they did throughout the year. But you know, to the point about good looks versus functionality, I feel like, at least in this point in like a SaaS lifecycle, or you know, looking at most SaaS products out there, we've had this discussion before, where it's great to have something that works really well, but if it doesn't like function or look nice enough for people to want to use it as well, then you know, it kind of defeats the purpose. Especially if we're going for something like, you know, trying to generate a viral growth loop, for instance, because sure, someone might generate it and keep it stored on their computer, but then it would be great to generate outputs or templates that people are happy, you know, like it just fills them with so much joy that they want the world to know. And obviously I think there's two separate elements there of actually designing the structure and the engineering behind that. But you know, it becomes an interesting conversation about investment in aesthetics almost, and UX.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
we have a use case that's sort of emerging right now with our research team who did the 30 interviews, and now, you know, now they want to basically sort of like I would say, Justin, like a nonfiction like team, specifically doing some really cool stuff in a specific niche. But now they've done the 30 interviews, they've uploaded them all into Speak, and now this part comes to them to do the analysis part. But in the end, what they care about most, I feel like, is sort of like representations or compelling visualizations of the meaning that they got from those interviews, so they can present it in a compelling manner. Because they're going to a company presentation, it's going to end up probably not as good as a slide deck as nonfiction does, because those things are awesome, but like sort of a presentation thing. And it's like, if we're to give them for example, a wonky word cloud, or like a graph that just looks like shit, it's just not going to make it. It's not going to make that cut. Like, our ideal, I hope, is that we can get into that final presentation and it's like, this is a beautiful graph, this is a beautiful chart, and I can't help but not put it into the presentation because it makes that impact.
Yeah. What comes to my mind originally is one, quotes, and you have the sentiment analysis. So you've got a real good shot at being able to get great quotes out of there. Even better if you get, I don't know, you probably can't get this, but the pictures of the people who have the quotes. My guess is you're not going to be able to get that because it's anonymous, but that would be nice to have. And then the next thing I would say on top of that was a nice cartoon artist who's representing the character who's making the quote, and then also, doing the thing. I would probably go in that direction. But I think the quote's going to be the key thing that's going to resonate for people.
Yeah. And we've seen two ways of that, which is promoting a quote in text format, or then what we've heard sometimes is like, we would actually like to be able to simply play back the quote, in that presentation, like not have to, not obviously clicking around to find it, but like, get to that slide and it's like, great, you can just talk about what people said, but if you heard from one of your customers or prospective customers or someone who uses one of your competitors this quote, and you hear it out loud and them say it instead of it just being represented through text, there's a big impact that can be made there. So trying to figure out that whole system. And again, we've been talking about this for a long time, and it's it's easier, I think, said than done, but I think it's a continued mission to sort of refine the outputs that we can have here to make the system even more valuable and sort of solve the full process of where this needs to go, and whether that's shareable internally for the team or in a presentation, or I want to share this on my my LinkedIn post or my Instagram story or whatever there.
Interesting.
So any last topics, any last thoughts?
I've got one more on it. There's a guy, Colt Cabana, who was like the pioneer of pro wrestling podcasting. He's doing a show right now where it's people just call in and leave voicemail messages, and he leaves commentary. So, that could be a hey, here's the 3 big lessons that we learned. Lesson 1, boom, quotes, lesson, you know, like almost be like a 5-minute audio message that's a guided tour could really be impactful. I can't remember the name of his new podcast, but if you look at that'll kind of give you the sense where he talks between things and contextualize it. That could get super interesting and probably isn't going to be that tough to produce.
I see. Just a last point about just thinking from the engineering mindset is like, okay, that let's say the first iteration doesn't look that beautiful or that have that charm with the output, but if that creates the value that pushes us our boundary to reach that with this beautiful layout and reach to the level that, yeah, it represents the value itself. So it is, in my thought with the engineering mindset, it's more about creating the value with the first hit. And then once you get that hit, like then try to retrade the versions with the representing beautifully. I mean, if you see any of this website, or any layout, any SaaS product, right? That goes that way. It's like once you create, hit the level, and then try to retrade the versions, and like have better, visualizations persons or have that expertise and let them to do their best job.
One thing that is also like I guess our sort of for example, our visualization, our hope is not too abstract or too imaginative. Like I think there is value that we can produce, but then we've seen another path of value that we've been asked for. And one of them is a bigger customer that's on board and they're putting a ton of audio and video recordings in the system. And it's actually used in a more sort of clinical context. And so what's happening is they're grabbing these recordings and the final output that they need to make is it's called a SOAP assessment, subjective objective assessment plan. So like Justin, maybe you've had the experience, but like when you run through, I didn't realize this until I figured this out, but like when you go to a doctor or whatever, they're running you through this. How do you feel? And then they do the objective measures, heartbeat and all that. And then, they make an assessment and then they make the plan for like the next steps. And that's a full structure that therapists are taught, physicians are taught, like everyone's sort of taught this. And so the really interesting part here is that this team is creating a SOAP assessment at the end for their customers, and they're using our system to do that. And right now they're taking a transcript, but ideally what's possible here, and this needs some serious mapping out, which is like based off what's being said, keywords or phrases, as a very simplistic understanding of representing it, like figuring this out, or a more advanced sort of natural language processing understanding, we could help structure the output document to be that SOAP assessment. And if we, instead of just giving them the raw transcript in the Word doc, we could give them the structure with bullet points and say we were even to hit 75% accuracy, even maybe lower than that, you could probably have a pretty significant reduction in time to produce the final SOAP assessment. So that's sort of like, I think there's a huge value add there beyond sort of the visualization part, which is maybe even more measurable. And just a little bit more in that marketing domain idea of this is like, what about like this idea of like podcast show notes? How could we automate that process and structure? And one of the examples that we looked at was like Tim Ferriss's podcast, where it's like, basically he's got the description so the summary, like topics with the timestamps, which we're getting closer and closer to be able to do. And then it's, for example, people mentioned, and literally the people mentioned is just links to those people's Twitter profiles or Wikipedia. And basically it creates this like really contextual link-based page at the end that then can help you interact with that data or turn what was a pretty large amount of information and make it a little bit more digestible and stuff. So like, I think is something that we're realizing this pattern is a lot of people coming with transcripts or audio files or even other systems that are doing transcription only. But the question we get over and over is just like, now what? Like, what do we do? Or how can we sort of make this thing even more valuable? And so really trying to spend a lot of time there lately.
Yep. Tyler, I see from that point is like, I see also moving forward, the Speak will have like, I don't know, I believe everyone have used the Zapier, sort of a Zapier integrations is like on and off. So on the Speak, you can turn on and off the different template versions. It's like you choose the category, let's say the medical or the marketing or the research, and you will have the different templates. And like, if you turn on, you will have the output into the different format. It's a whole different challenge, but I hope you're getting the whole reason. And it's like, what I'm looking at is like having those category and the templated versions ready-made for you, like a Zapier, and you just turn on and off what are the formats you are expecting in output. That would be mind-blowing.
Yeah. Even Lauren said it, like Lauren was like, if you look at Google Docs, there's like a structure for meeting notes. right? And like you're writing into that structure. But you know, like literally at the top, oh shit, I'm doing Nihal, I'm doing you, I'm hitting like there's like Google Docs at the top of it is like the structure is one-click import. Notion's obviously done it. You know, like what we've talked about a little bit lately is just like the power of companies that have built templates for people, because inherently you're saving time, you're creating a repeatable process. And we've already got, for example, the pieces that are like brand generated. So like just insert your logo into that doc. If you know, at the next level is like, hey, here, what font do you want? You have, if for any, you know, things that are highlighted, what's the font, the brand color that you want? And it becomes this very polished output that saves like a significant amount of time. And then again, ideally we get to the point where it's like, this is ready. After a meeting or after a webinar, you literally have a PDF that you could send that's beautifully formatted as a meeting note or a podcast show note or a webinar post wrap up summary that's already ready. So I don't know, it excites me too much. I'm trying to calm myself down about it because I just think it's the thing we bumped in over and over again is like, you know, Tyler Vatch was a bunch of insights in the panels, but like, how does this help me? How does this help the business? How does this do, what does this do? And I think this is where we can say, here's what this does, and finally get to that solution that we see as valuable.
A couple of things come to mind. The closest I've ever come to minutes on the back of a meeting was with Slido, but you're actually doing surveys and you can structure the questions, you know, to you know, for the output on the back end. I really like what 𝗏𝗀𝗁 was saying about the turn on, turn off, like in the health, you know, I was like, are we heading down a mental health issue? Let's turn on that template and see. I don't know where we're going, but there's early signs that we're heading in that, you know, that direction. And then where else was I? Yeah, I think those are the two things. Another company that I've been working with is Talk.social, which is doing like templated social events. Yeah, that's probably not the best way to put it, but they're, you know, they want to be able to, you know, they call it like social lubricant, how to build relationships with people very quickly. The advantage that you have is you just have so much more data than any of these other types, you know, than Slido has, because that's limited to what people actually type in. But the disadvantage is it's not structured, you know, nearly, you know, that's
unstructured data.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a little too excited there, so I'm going to try to calm myself down. Lauren, we did have some, I guess, sort of thematic consistency with what we want to talk about with topics. While we're on this templated part, just before we, you know, veer off, is there anything that you wanted to add, or specifically we're thinking from your end that adds some, I guess, some context to this, or what you were thinking?
Well, you already kind of brought it up anyways. I was just curious about like what the actual process of like auto-populating a form would be. Like I guess they already are, you know, just taking the transcript and picking out the actual sentences that they want to carry over into the form. But I'm just curious about how you think the actual operation of, you know, they just upload a form and they don't even want to actually have to fill out the form. They just want the, you know, the transcript to automatically, you know, auto-populate over into the form. So I'm just curious about if that's even something that you'd be interested in doing, what the process of that would be like if you're doing like, I don't know, like hotkeys, just trying to reduce the amount of buttons you have to click, or maybe training an actual machine learning algorithm to be able to pick out, you know, where, you know, what the customer intends to be taking out of the actual transcription there, and whether or not it's even like, you know, worth the effort too, because it's like, if in the time that it takes, like go back to the SOAP assessment, and the time that it takes for a doctor or a therapist to run through the SOAP assessment manually, and it's actually quicker to do that than to actually have to fumble with technology that's not 100% optimized. Is even like worth going down that path? So yeah, just a couple of thoughts there.
Lauren, good questions, Lauren. Quickly, I'll just say the way that I see this functionality, because Neil and I were talking about this yesterday, is that it's not, you don't necessarily interact with the final output directly in the app. You would edit the transcript and then you would hit sort of this like export to SOAP assessment, and that would become a Word doc with the built structure. And then and then it sort of automatically categorized and structured into the template that they're looking at. For this example, the SOAP assessment. And so what we're seeing the current system uses right now is that they're editing the transcript to make it basically 100% themselves. They're doing that manually within the system. And then they are then exporting to the Word doc and then reformatting that Word doc into the SOAP assessment. So I think we're actually, as long as they have a clean transcript, we should, with a decent amount of accuracy, be able to make that transfer. And then it might just be a quick review. I mean, again, there's lots of breakdowns in my logic upon that entire thing. And like, I'm sure 𝗲𝗲 has some technology limitations that he's would like to bring up here. But overall, I see it as actually being a pretty intuitive process that, again, even if you get the 65% process and the structure is there already, if they give us the structure they want and we can land it in that in a nice way with pretty high accuracy, that's a valuable add. And we've been asked about it. This isn't just us making this up. We've actually been asked to do this by customers. So that's always a nice indicator that we're not making it up from complete imagination.
And also, like on the operational side, that's the whole different story. Then when you lay out the user story is like, what is the objective? But when you go to on the operation side, on the execution side, it has its own challenges in many ways. It's like how many softwares we know which exist already in the market, how many of them they are using, how many clinics we personally talk with them, what is the process look like, how they want to execute it, right? And it's like how the software fulfills those requirements. It is not about software does this way, so you manage your workflow, but it's like sort of in the middle ground is like, well, this is your workflow, we are trying to reduce this way. Does that helpful, and how we can reiterate those versions? So yeah, I mean, on the theoretical side, when you create the user story, it's like, this is what are the expected outcomes. It has its own way to represent, but when it's good on the execution side, it has the whole different story on managing. Let's say, okay, when we create the SOAP assessment, what is the validations or how we measure that is it accurate, or are we putting the subjective in the objective and objective part in the subjective, and says like how are we going to validate those things? So yeah, it has its own beauty and the challenges to talk about, but it's more about what do we want to achieve and why do we want to achieve with the existing softwares in the market. So that's the angle I would take it.
And there's a whole lot of sorry, there's like a whole lot of extra workflow that goes into if you're just focusing on like one specific assessment. Like if you're just, the end goal here is just to get the SOAP assessment figured out, but maybe you're jumping into it a bit too quickly because you're just trying to focus on like one one template out of thousands that customers could potentially want. So maybe it's a matter of looking at the tech from a very wide open face of, I needed this to get done for any possible template or form that gets put up here, as opposed to just this one form for this one very specific task for this one very specific market.
I think that's how innovation works, though, is this sort of iterative process. You know what I mean? If you figure out one template, then you're building the pipeline to build another template. And then you just sort of listen to customers and prioritize. And, again, to keep with this, I guess the SOAP assessment example, like, I think very quickly, like 𝗲𝗲 made a good point of like, what if you put the objective and the subjective? And like, I guess ideally for us, it's like closing that loop of like why that is happening as quickly as possible. Correct. So it's like, this didn't work. Okay, give us the document. Okay, this makes sense. This word or phrase or triggered this to go into that, and now we can do that. So the iteration could happen very quickly as long as we build the feedback loop. Yeah. Right. So, and that's exciting. Like that's where I think I almost swore, like true innovation happens, and you make progress with it. And it's like, we got a really nice comment from a guy who I have a lot of respect for in business a few days ago, and he was just like, the only way that you could get to some of these things is to have spent so much time building this and then like understanding the technical challenges and then the opportunities here. And that was just a nice moment, because sometimes it's like we spent so long building the foundation of Speak, but you're not just building the tech, you're also building the expertise and knowledge to then execute more efficiently on the things that we're getting towards now. So just a nice thing, because sometimes like, wow, this has been a long time, but that was a really nice thing. So anyone, that's all, Justin, anyone have any other thoughts on this idea, I guess, of the templates part? I'll just add quickly here then, from my perspective, we have a whole list of, did the brain dump on templates. I'm not going to reveal them now because that's just too many, but just a couple of things that I just thought were like, what were the companies that did drive this? So like one of them, like just a couple companies like Canva, like Google Data Studio templates. One of the big ones that came across for marketers back in the day was like, even for like Divi website builders on WordPress or Elementor page builders, or like there was like Unbounce or lead pages, and it was like one-click page import. The amount of time that would save, like both in execution, but then also I would find like cognitive load. You know, to build something from scratch is a huge endeavor, but to have like the structure that's pre-built, and like on lead pages, it was like, these are conversion ready pages. We've seen these deployed in the market, and we're messaging the conversion rate. If you want a page that converts at 25%, one-click import. So like that was an amazing sort of piece that came out of it. I think there's too much room for innovation here, and too much. We won't dive any deeper. I guess introduce anyone else who wants to bring something up or has something to talk about.
No, it's just one thing I just lastly want to add is like, I mean, I personally also find challenges because if we spread too wide, we're talking about, it's like, okay, what market are you trying to focus on? Is that okay, importing the DV or the theme that is the best example to represent that SOAP assessment, or the other marketing related templates? But it's like where you are going towards, or what market you are focusing on. It's like, who are those users? Why are they going to use it? So, I mean, those are the good questions, but also then it's create the more challenges while also doing the innovation. So yeah, it's just sort of a counterpoint. It's like, okay, then it's like, okay, where are exactly we looking at? Is like, where are we going towards? So yeah, if anyone have thoughts, it's like,
well, yeah.
To key off, I think key off what Vashal just shared, and I think what Tyler shared before, it's you put cognitive load in as a statement. I'm wondering if cognitive load is going to start replacing time, you know, as far as what we want to measure. And going the art of impossible, I think they measure like flow state is like 104% of your capacity, and that's just like it's a little bit above what you can actually do. It's not too challenging where it's too much, and I think that's I've been hearing myself use cognitive load quite a bit recently as far as the measure, and I think that's actually probably something that can be physically measured as well. I go back, I see your aura ring every time, and I keep on going back and forth and deciding on that. But yeah, and so I think that's going to start to dictate like what gives people an experience of like, I can breathe now, or I don't have to worry about this.
Say one product that we've seen this grow because of this, I actually never really thought of that, but is this like the copy AI or the conversion AI, or these companies that are using the GPT-3 to generate basically variations of ads or blog posts or things, basically sometimes just the starting point. But like sometimes as a writer, or like you have an ad campaign to do, you're just like, this is a nightmare. I have to build this thing from scratch. And to drop in a couple bullet points and then get 50 variations that are all pretty decent, that then you can just generate the ideas off to get to the final output. Sometimes you don't even need that. You can literally just take the final output that produced for you. Is when we talk about the age that we're in of like knowledge work, and a lot of the work that's being done being like highly complex mental activities that can only be sustained for so long, there is a huge value in that reduction. So that's interesting. I've never really thought of that. So thank you, Justin.
Yeah, and I mean, GPT-3 is like, I think it's the new like the definition there is like, it's good enough automated. And it's the first thing that is, it's not great, it's not world class, but it's good enough that you can be like, oh, I don't have to spend, like, I could ship this, like, on my worst day. So good.
That's it. A lot of us get tired and we're like, this is good enough. You know what I mean? And, and you just sort of ship it, right? So
it's so interesting thing that to think about is like, okay, we are trying to solve the problem with the technology, but at the same point, we always try to exclude ourselves from the technology. It's like Nihal also said in the morning, is like, he had never thought the internet went down. Is like never thought is like how much time he had personally also, and also it's like, you know, when you cut off from the technology, is like you feel so much different than who you are. So it's like sort of a balance. It's like, okay, we want to solve everything with the technology, but at the same time, as a human elements, like we want to exclude ourselves or take a, you know, break from the technology. It's like interesting angle to see that.
We did a frustration talk. It was awesome, Justin, on our quarterly sort of get together. We were going to do more strategic planning, but it was just like, you know what? Let's just talk about everything that makes us frustrated. And a lot of time, what's nice again is we don't have a selfish group, so a lot of frustration center around serving our customers better too. And like a lot of it, but then there was some that was like, this is personal to me. But one of the things that kept coming up was like, it's the repeatable things over and over again that feel like I could do this with sort of my eyes closed, that creates a lot of frustration. You know what I mean? Like, and if you can remove that to just focus on higher level activities, or finish, you know, if you can take something through technology to 60 to 80%, and then you just have to finish the task using the, you know, the higher level functioning of a human brain, then that's wonderful. If every single activity that you're doing, you're reducing 60% of that, like I would be happy with that. So yeah, I got nothing else to add there. This has been very interesting little breakthrough for me on the call here. Nihal, you're quiet, sir. What's up, buddy? How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm good. I mean, I guess, are we moving on? Because I did want to talk about like Lauren's point about the value of accelerators, because
Okay.
you know, I've never had the chance to like go through one, but you guys have, so it would be interesting to hear your experiences with that, you know, pros, cons, and you know, whether we do that again even.
All right.
Not sure who wants to start.
Justin, just for clarity, you have it's not at Citi. There's a venture arm, but it's not necessarily an accelerator. Like some companies have inbuilt accelerators at companies. Do you have any?
There is one. I'm not so familiar with it. There's one out of Tel Aviv, which is which is an accelerator. And then the venture arm is a little bit different. That sits, you know, that the accelerator sits inside of the business. We had a conversation about doing that in New York. I mean, it was very rudimentary conversations a couple of years ago. So, but yeah, I think the large corporate accelerators are very different than the like the, I guess, Y Combinator, right? Is the Harvard, is that how you'd put it? Of the, I don't know if they're the Harvard or the Walmart. Yeah, you know, but yeah, so they're a little bit different inside, but there is some versions in the company.
Lauren, do you have any, I guess, before we start, if anyone, you know, we start talking about this, anything that you wanted to get specifically out of this, or your thoughts? I mean, again, being a little nice here, but like you've actually been part of some of the accelerator experiences that we've had, both positive and negative. So just wanted to make sure you get out what you want out of this topic.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked the few times that I went. I can't, as embarrassing as it is, I can't really remember the one that was at Western. Was that like
it was just called the Western Accelerator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
right.
Well, Propel Entrepreneurship
that's the
Center, but it was Propel Entrepreneurship Center, but it was the Western Accelerator as part of the Propel. It was all confusing.
Yeah.
To be honest,
It was a big of a mess, so I guess that makes sense why I couldn't quite remember. But I really liked it. There was great advice given, at least. But I feel like that's kind of the whole situation when it comes to accelerators. It's all just advice. And at our stage and where the company is right now, I'm curious about like what kind of advice do we even need in this stage too. Maybe when it comes to like actually like financing and stuff like that, we can definitely get some help there, because it's our first round, so it's all baby steps at the moment. But yeah, I'm just curious about, do you think that to a degree we've moved beyond accelerators, or if we are going to be going into accelerators again in the future, is there any like hesitation, or is there going to be like some level of I know what I want and F the rest kind of thing? Is it I'm just curious how you guys feel about them. Like I've gotten a lot out of them, but I feel like going forward, it's kind of diminishing returns in a way.
I'm with you. I think there are, I mean, I would say that the different life cycles of a company, an accelerator can be like a make it or break it thing, or something that really allows you to live versus not live and become a company that has opportunity to grow. So, and there was within that, there's also accelerators at different stages of growth in a company. So for example, I just at 𝗲𝗻𝗻 Institute, they have specific requirements about what stage you are at before you can become part of that program. So I forget, it's 2 million in revenue or 5. So they're actually servicing a different class. And like, we were lucky enough to interface with them a little last year, Lauren, and it was like the companies were in there were like, what, like at least 25 people. You know what I mean? The problems that they were talking about were very different problems than what we were necessarily facing at the time.
And they had like pretty large like innovation and like research alliances. It seemed like with a whole bunch of different companies. Like it didn't just seem like, you know, one motley crew of some startup. It was some like it seemed like some sort of like university mixed with some sort of research firm over in some other European country. They all come together for 𝗲𝗻𝗻. So
yes,
maybe if we were getting more of if we're finding some other, you know, research companies that we wanted to partner up with, that's a whole nother story. I don't even think we've cracked open the can of alliances and partnerships and mergers and all that jazz.
It's the time, right? Like there are some, like one of a program like that is actually trying to connect you with international like investment opportunities or international sales and customer opportunities. How do you get past the barriers of selling in different countries? And well, and there's always the good and then there's always the negative. One of the things I heard that's really interesting is like, it makes sense. Like from an investor perspective, you actually don't want companies who are just going around in different accelerators, because you want companies who can just do it, you know, figure it out themselves. It's like, you know, yeah, it's so there's like that, I think, sort of mindset that is. And of course, there are these world-class accelerators like Y Combinator, who, you know, almost any company, you know, would love to get in, especially in an early stage. But then I've also seen challenges at a later stage where, because of the terms and evaluation of a program like that, it could actually have a negative impact if you've already had investors, or it could actually even though it's going to increase your valuation quickly based through the period, it could actually classify you into a certain range and then set the valuation back that might not be what you truly would be valued at in a deal outside of that accelerator. So, and then, you know, there's other, like there's so many accelerators popping out in the world right now. Like, I don't know, Vatso, if you see them in your email, in like the success email, but we get them all the time. It's like, where are you from? It's like, I'm like, are you really an accelerator? Like, you know, I don't know much about it, but I think it's become such a interesting thing that people want to do, sometimes to truly help, sometimes to get in very early at a company with terms that maybe are not that good to the company, but can be very good to the accelerator if that becomes a win. Yeah, I'm not sure if you have anything else to.
Yeah, you put a couple of things. I have 3 other elements. What I personally see after coming to Canada and going through the 3 accelerator program. One was at the Western, the 𝗲𝗶𝗄, then we went through the Waterloo, and the third one was the DMZ. And it's like, in my personal experience on the technical end, maybe that's my personal point of view, but I didn't get that much, you know, benefits out of the program, because it is mostly about creating the business relationships or making the contact, or all about the helping them in the, again, the finance or the legal side. So, I mean, it is more about, number one is like, why do you want to join the accelerator program? And it's like, at what stage are you in? Because if you know what you need to be done, I mean, it's like, then you can execute at your own. But if you stuck somewhere, there's always someone to help you in the legal or finance process. But on the technical end, you will get, yes, of course, all the different perks in terms of the credits of the cloud platform and the, you know, the email marketing platform and stuff. So that is the one part of it that helps you in the early stage. But on the another end, it is like, exactly, it's like, why do you want to join in the first place? What is the objective joining of the accelerator program, and when do you want to join it?
I think when it comes to like any sort of institute that you join up with, you know, whether that's some sort of school like a university, whether that's an accelerator, or even just like a company too, it's all a matter of like the relationships that you're building, the community that you're joining up with. Like something that's really driving me towards like Y Combinator has just been all like the people, you know, working there and all the videos they put up. And it's like when you associate yourself with, you know, very successful, very motivated people, like that energy really rubs off on you too, and really adds some energy to you. So yeah, it's all about like that's kind of the stereotype of university. If you're not going there to socialize, to develop some sort of, you know, professional but also like friendly relationship, then you're probably not doing it right.
It definitely helps to grow the company, and also definitely on the marketing and sales side, right? Because you are in that environment talking with the people all the time, so that definitely helps. It's like, even, I don't know if you want to say, but like even at the DMZ when we were there, you can feel the energy as soon as you enter in the door. It's like everyone is so focused, working on things. It's like even 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, it's like still discussing about the business. So that's always motivates, at least personally, me, and it's like driving through the whole process.
Yeah, and you're interfacing with companies who are at similar stages, or you're either you're interfacing with companies at the same stage, companies
Yes.
that maybe are slightly earlier, or companies that are farther ahead. And each one of those produces so much value. Like, you know, you learn, oh my God, this company, like you just hear direct challenges, or then someone, you know, someone who needs a little help, then you get to help out and you can articulate something that actually helps you too. So it just becomes this amazing ability to have like a community, and then surrounded by this, like, I like the idea of like the growth mindset of like people who are, the reason why they're in Y Combinator or DMZ or any of these programs is because they're not thinking in a limited way. They're like, I'm going to take my company to be $1 billion company. And those are fun people to be around, and maybe a little crazy sometimes, but that's also fun. So I've learned a lot there. One other part that I would say, which is the dangerous part that I think comes, and there is a separation between this idea of incubators and accelerators, is the programming that goes along with it. And, you know, for myself, now at the stage that we're in, the idea of, for example, there being mandatory 3-hour program every Tuesday from 9 to 12 p.m., that hurts me. You know what I mean? I think that's some of the most valuable time that I have. And if that program or that speaker or the what is not delivering true value, I'm gone. It's just not. Now at this, in the earlier stages, just you're soaking up knowledge, but now it's like I could be messaging X, Y, and Z. I could be doing this, and you have to start realizing your own value of time and the impact that you can make in 3 hours of focus instead of doing something else. So hope that answered. Is that good? Nihal, any other things on that? And then you good? Justin, we have a couple minutes left. Anything else that you sort of came through, synthesized this conversation? I guess any ending parts, any wisdom from Justin? Anything else that you're thinking before we close this up?
Yeah, I enjoyed the accelerator conversation, and I'm very interested. I got a sense of where kind of you're in the fundraising process, and I think that's an exciting play. And I think really the key indicator is the who's the lead investor, whether that's like the official lead investor or who's the person who's driving it, who's been there before. So I'm excited to see that. On a personal level, if there's anybody who sees this who's a Notion person, like I'm looking to do some automations in Notion based on some tagging. That's been top of mind, and I just haven't connected with anybody on that one yet. So it's always great to be back and always learn something on these office hours. Thanks for having me.
I know there's some Notion fans here in this room, and then also watching. So I hope that they reach out. Just quickly, a couple things on this fundraising part that are sort of interesting, which is, first of all, we just sent out this quarterly report, and we had some good metrics. So that always having good metrics is always helpful when you're going into that process. You know, that there was something really interesting. This is just something I learned from someone who's been much further along in this journey today, which is like, you know, I guess for one thing is that, you know, investors, like everyone, are, you know, we're all emotional people, and we want to be, you know, we want to support people that we believe in. We want to support people that we care about. And we also get caught up in excitement. We get caught up in FOMO. You know, so one of the good lessons of this is like, how do you, when people have a lot of leverage, you know, in an investor and investee relationship, there's companies that are accelerating at ridiculous speeds. And in that case, those companies have a lot of leverage in those conversations. And, you know, there's a bunch of investors who want to get on the train, and that creates a lot of power in that dynamic. When you don't have as much power in that dynamic based on the stage of your company, or, you know, you've got great metrics, but, you know, still not hyper growth, or still, how do you also do that? And one of the interesting things that was recommended to me was this idea of like basically like an indication of interest and then putting that at a specific timeline. I just thought this was such an interesting concept. I had never heard of this before, but it was basically, you know, talking to investors, you start to get some good signals that people are interested in contributing. But one of the things you never want to do, we've seen this with grants, we've seen this with customers, is like until the contract is closed or until the money is in the bank, that is not a done deal. And so this indication of interest is basically a deadline that you put and say, hey, by this time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you need to submit an indication of interest that you're want to contribute to this round. And we want to know the terms that it is. It's non-committal, but basically it's a preliminary term sheet. And at that stage, then you can make that assessment and you pick whoever, you know, who, like you said, that lead investor is a huge signal to other investors, or as you move forward, like where that should, you know, how successful your company is and what kind of trajectory it's on. So like, that was just something that really emerged for me and what they talked about. This is for anyone who's going through this process. This is, you know, I'm hoping to share, which is like what I'm learning along the way is like, you're not always optimizing for valuation. You're optimizing for control of the company, how much that investor believes in you. If they're going to follow up in another round, what terms are they looking for? You know, there's companies that take an investment but they're not in a good situation. And so they have to have a board meeting before they can approve expenses every single time. Or, you know, there's so many stipulations that can come out in this that, you know, ideally, what do you want to do? And what do all, I think, you know, especially like companies led by, you know, people like us who enjoy what we do. It's like, we just want to get back to work. We want to get back to building. We want to keep doing what we're doing because we love it. And that's why we're even exploring these opportunities and avenues. And so just a couple lessons that I've learned along the way. I've got many more. Hopefully the lessons at the end of this is like, it would be successful. Lessons from a successful fundraise and not the lessons of, you know, here's a non-successful fundraise. Either way, though, it's lessons. And I'm proud to, you know, having the discussions that we're having and making this progress and learning a lot of great things along the way. So just, yeah, I'll keep updated on that, but yeah, very exciting time, scary time, but you know, we've got something good here and excited to keep sharing that with everyone that we can. Good. Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Justin, awesome to see you, man. Really appreciate you coming here. I miss you so much. So it's just great to see your face and talk and, you know, not do it asynchronously, just, you know, do it right here live. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, okay. Anyone who tuned in, watched this, read it, love you so much. Hope you have a good rest of the day and an awesome weekend.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.